Hi everyone, I'm JD from Willowbound Journals. Welcome back to my channel. I have a tutorial in this video for you guys. This is showing my process making one of these fabric journal covers. So I start with a box. For this particular tutorial I'm using a Ritz, a biscuit box, but I've also used shapes boxes and Jats boxes, also frozen meal boxes, so any type of box. You can use cereal boxes, muesli bar boxes, soup boxes, depending on what size you want. But I found that this Ritz box size is my favorite. This is the kind of size that I like my journals. I do measure the width and height later on, so I'll show you those dimensions later. But the first thing I do is open up the box, find the edge that has the place where the cardboard overlaps, and I cut down that edge, and then it opens out, and then I just cut off all of those edges. So then here is my box. Now I'm just measuring it. Usually you can just leave it as is if you cut around the edges nice and straight, but this one, the box had a bit of a crease or a bump down one side, so I had to cut that crease off, or where it buckled, and now I'm just measuring it so that the other end matches the height of that end that I cut off a little bit where the crease was. So I'm just doing that now and trimming that off. Of course, if you have a paper trimmer, definitely use a paper trimmer. I just use what I have, so scissors and ruler is fine. Oh, now I'm measuring it for you. So it's 15 centimeters wide with a 5.5 centimeter spine, and the height is about 20 centimeters roughly. So that's about the size that I like my journals, nice and large. Now all I'm doing here is reinforcing the box with a bit of extra weight, just using some standard A4 copy paper. So I'm just applying some glue. You could also use a glue stick, I've done that in the past. So it's just to add an extra layer, basically to give it a bit more structure, sturdiness. But most of all, the reason I'm doing this is to cover up the red colouring, because sometimes depending on the fabric or paper you use, you can kind of see through it, and I don't want to see, for this particular project, through to the branding of the box. So I just cover it over with some paper. You can use any type of paper, scrapbook paper, card, or whatever paper. So I just use plain copy paper. Here is my fabric that I'm using. This is beautiful floral fabric with the pink and purple flowers that I got from the op shop. And I have just sped up this video. As you can see, I sped it up so that it wouldn't go on forever. The original video process took me about half an hour to do, and so just speeding it up so that you can watch this sped up. But if you prefer it in real time, just let me know, because I know some people prefer it in real time because it helps to see the entire process well, especially for beginners. Maybe that's a bit easier to see, but hopefully the sped up version just gives you the gist, the overview of what to do, and you can give it a go at home yourself. Obviously you can use paper to cover the journal, you can use cardstock, scrapbook paper, but for this particular project I'm using fabric, and I just glue in sections or segments. So the first part I glue one side of the covers first, and I'm just trimming down the fabric, doing these angle cuts. You could do a hard angle cut straight across, but I like to do two slightly different angles, just because I find that it overlaps the fabric a bit better, so you're not left with a gap. But just make sure you don't cut your angled cut right up close to the corner of the journal cover, because that's when you do get a little bit of a gap there. Unless you have journal cover corners, those metal corners, then go for it. But I found when I did a hard cut close to the edge, it would leave a gap and you could see the cover through it. So yeah, I'm just going to glue down the side section, and that's basically now making that front cover nice and sturdy in place. Now I'm going to do the spine next, and this is just to avoid all of the creasing and buckling in the fabric, basically, because once you fold it, it pulls on the fabric, and when you open it out, it decreases the amount of area that the fabric has to fill up. I am not sure if I'm explaining myself well at all, but hopefully you can just see what I'm doing. And yep, just applying more craft glue. I'm using just clear craft glue from the cheap shop, so use whatever you have. You can use PVA, fabric glue, Fabri-Tac, whatever you would like. Okay, so then I've done that side. Now I am just pulling it tight across there, as tight as I can, to have it not buckle. And then I'm doing my angle cuts here. And then I will glue down the flap for the other cover, the back cover. And I leave my margins quite large, as you can see here. It just gives me more space to grab onto, more surface area for the glue to be applied, so I find it sticks better. But of course you can cut your margins of fabric a lot narrower. The other reason I like having wider margins though is because you don't need as much fabric to cover the inside cover. So I'm just pulling, pushing, moulding this, pulling them out so that it won't buckle, and then just, yeah, you can use a bone folder for this if you'd like, but I'm just using my finger because I can kind of feel where the creases are. And then I glue this one down straight across like this, and I find gluing it this way instead of making little cuts along where the spine is, again, it just helps give more coverage so that everything's nicely overlapped and you can't see the cover peeking through, the cardboard, sorry, peeking through. Alright, so now I'm just going to grab some more of this fabric and I'm going to cut it to size for the inside of the cover. So just trimming down the side and trimming along the top. Oh, I also trim along here. I could leave that edge a bit rustic, but that's where I rip some fabrics. You can rip it and it just rips nicely in a straight line. Sometimes I leave it, sometimes I don't, just depends on my mood and what I feel like at the time. In this one I went for the clean cuts. And so I'm just lining it up here and then cutting the top edge. I get some questions about my scissors too. The scissors I'm using are Fiskars scissors. And now just gluing them in sections again. So I'm going to glue the front cover first and lay that down. Now I always struggle with the inside and having it buckle at those creases. So it's just a matter of, I just kind of push and pull and mold it into place. And I'm just using a tissue to smooth out the glue. Again, you could use a bone folder, or some people use like a credit card, like an old credit card to smooth out the glue. But here I guess I just like using my fingers so I can feel it, feel where the grooves and creases are, where I need to smooth it out. And then just gluing the edges. So yeah, did the spine next, and now I'm doing the back cover. Smoothing that out, pulling it across, and then just making sure my creases are as tight as possible so that there's not as much buckling. And so there is my cover. Now I'm also going to be adding a closure. So I've just got some purple eyelets. They came from Craft Online, which is an online craft shop. I've got some seam binding that came from Which Craft Do You Do, an Australian online shop as well. I've got my crocodile that came from the lovely Denise. Thank you so much, Denise. That was a Christmas present that she sent me one year and I absolutely love it and think of you every time I use it, Denise. And so I'm just marking my holes, marking roughly halfway, the halfway mark along length of the journal to get the closure, and then I also do one halfway across the spine to add a dangle if people want to add their own dangle. And then just using my crocodile again to crimp those or clamp those into place. Very cool. And now I'm grabbing my seam binding, and all I'm doing here is folding it in half, finding the midway point, and then I'll cut it. And then I did leave the seam binding quite long for these closures, just because the journal was, I think it was a 4 signature journal, and so to give it some more room to grow, just made some really long ribbons for the closure. I go in through the outside in, loop it over and pull it through. I'm sure there's a proper name for that. I'm not sure what the name for that is, but I love that simple method and I like how it looks. Go through the outside, push it through the loop, and there is my closure. Beautiful. So now I'm just going to tie a little bow. Hope that tutorial was helpful. Let me know if it was. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and have fun making your own fabric journal covers. I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.